and thank you for stopping at our show. It's a restaurant. We're doing this together now. So, today's talk has been about addiction, love, and the family values, and what we wish to discuss between all the merits and the downtrodden elements of those specific topics. Whoa.
Precisely.
But
Precisely what we were just discussing.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. As we talk about addiction, we talk about the different kinds of addiction, the different things that we are addicted to that we may not even realize that we're addicted to. We tend to talk a lot about addiction as far as, heroin, crack, fucking porn, that kind of shit, sex,
yeah,
addiction,
something that sounds like a deadly sin,
exactly.
and that you can turn a blind eye to anything else that may actually be bringing you down in reality.
Right. And it's something where instead of actually acknowledging it as an addiction, we just sweep it under the rug, or we don't think too badly about it because it's not as demonized as these other addictions, and yet they are even more so because it's so easy for me to say, I'm not addicted to heroin or crack or meth or whatever,
yeah, it makes you feel
and be
like
really
cool.
then I'm fine, I'm all good. Yeah, I'm addicted to cigarettes, but I can buy those at any fucking corner store. Yeah, I'm addicted to sugar, but I can get that again at any corner store.
Yeah.
I'm addicted to fucking fast food and junk food, but I can get that at any fucking corner store. So it's one of these things where it's like, yeah, but yet these are affecting my life so much more than heroin or crack or any, but yet there's still addiction and I feel that to be true myself because I know at the end of the day, I can't just completely stop doing these things without some sort of process of either weaning myself off or having it be something where I start to try to substitute it for something a little bit more healthy.
Yeah, it has to be a learned, kind of part of,
You almost have to, deprogram yourself.
And not just that, but there's something I've noticed, with getting back on the smoking bandwagon is that,
yeah.
You'll find, a pivot in your life where, you have this tube of memory that, you can kind of work with.
Mm-hmm.
And once, that starts to fall apart, it's so much easier to, ignore all of that.
Right.
And just lay in this bed of whatever it is that you create.
Right.
Because you have to, kind of rewire your brain, reprogram it,
mm-hmm.
And into... So that, the next step you take after doing this, that, or the other thing is going to be equally as positive or creative to, the way you walk and talk.
Right.
Is the last one.
Right.
Which is why, I've been trying to just at least make some food to eat
mm-hmm.
for myself
mm-hmm.
and do a little working out,
Yeah. And, and that's one thing, too, that I also obviously struggle with is, all of the toxins that I put in my body tend to stay in my body. Because I don't do anything to excrete these toxins, other than the basic, obviously, take a shit, take a shower, scrub myself, and maybe sweat my ass off every now and then. But other than that, I don't do it as a religious thing. I don't do it as something that I actually go to the gym and say I'm gonna sweat out the toxins. I just allow my body to just naturally do it. But you have to. If you're going to have an abundance of toxins in your system, you have to take certain steps to try to eradicate that in some
and you also
fashion.
have to be really cautious about what it is that you use as the antithesis, because
mm-hmm.
that day I was in Kentucky is a great example.
Right.
I went from Arby's and McDonald's to vegan food,
right.
which wasn't bad food. It still tasted good.
Right.
But then I went and I just puked my guts out that night.
Right.
And just kept shitting and shitting.
And shitting.
Yeah, and that's not really a great date.
Right.
Right.
It's not.
She was still sweet enough about it, but...
Oh, another addiction. Socially accepted addiction.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things. It's tough to wrap your head around because we've been so conditioned to accept these.
Victimhood.
I mean,
because everybody, most people would say that the reason why they're hooked on McDonald's or cigarettes or whatever is because of some company that's controlling you. And
Right,
there's an element, but
right.
like you let them control you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely. At some point you have to unplug. At some point you have to be a free thinker. You have to realize that
And give yourself the energy to do it too.
Right, exactly. And it's tough because also one thing that I remember, we were talking about this the other day, something that we brought up that actually has kind of resonated with me is like this idea of the fact that we put so much of our motivation and our ambition into other people, and to the point where it's like we almost feel like we can't do it alone. Like we can't take control of our own destiny without somebody to do it for. For a long time, like, I've thought to myself, if I would have just gotten myself a woman and been in a good solid relationship with a woman, then maybe I would be at a different place in my life. Maybe I'd be more motivated to just do what needs to be done, instead of having this weird restless, like, fuck, I gotta get out, I gotta leave, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. I have so much.
I think it gets really easy to get lost with everybody, because you do have to have a community. Like, it's that convex with the concave thing where, like, you can't really do it alone.
Right.
So, like, you obviously have to work with whatever influences that are around you. But,
Right.
like, when you're younger and your parents like, oh, he's dating or whatever, they're just trying to be really cool because it makes them uncomfortable.
Right.
And then, like, you think that that's supposed to be the next step, whereas there are other steps that, like, no one doesn't seem to care, or you don't seem enough to care
Right.
about, like, learning about what those steps are and figuring it out, because you don't want to somehow step away from whatever community that gives you a base.
Right.
Because you feel that whatever the next step is might estrange you from whatever you funnel your energy from.
Right. Yeah, and like, I don't know, man. I've seen it in a lot of my friends who have kind of gotten, I don't want to say, they're none of them are really married, but they kind of marry young, quote unquote, because they get into these relationships that they see themselves in for their lives. They're with somebody that they at least feel comfortable enough to start having that conversation, to start saying, okay, maybe we should start thinking about our future, maybe, you know what I mean? Either that, or they'll have kids. And I do think that that's another thing, is like, having children definitely gives you a different perspective on life, kind of gives you that thought of like, okay, now I really have somebody to do it for, not just to either impress this person or to keep this person interested in me because I'm doing something to better my life or move forward in my life, but now you literally have a dependent. You have somebody whose existence and survival completely and utterly depends on you, to the point where it's like, okay, fuck whatever I was thinking I needed to do, this is what I actually need to do, and this is the path in which I need to take in order to provide for this person, this being that I've created.
Yeah.
So like, that's definitely another thing that kind of replays in my head. Is like, fuck, if I would have had a kid, maybe I'd be a little bit happier in my life, because I wouldn't feel
in those
sense of like
got married
existential
young
despair
relationships where it's like they really see their future as just a continuation of now, because they're so incapable of escaping from just the now.
Right.
Or not escaping, but being able to see outside the purviews of that conundrum.
Right.
And so they're really not actually planning on a future. They're really just hoping that, like, tomorrow feels as good as some good feeling you had today.
Right.
Or in some now, because, like, when I would get mad and think I couldn't have a future with some partner I was with,
right,
I would assume that, like, my future was going to be that now. And then on the flip side, I would assume that my future would be the other now that was like, oh, sunflowers and puppy dog kisses and whatnot.
Right.
And you have to build your own now, like you're talking about.
Right.
That is consistent, that you can take care of, that you can manage. That doesn't overwhelm you either.
Right.
I don't feel overwhelmed enough to not want to make myself some, like sunny side up eggs with some potatoes and some ham.
Right.
Throw little onions in there.
Right.
And that feels awesome. I don't really feel put out enough to, like I was down by the lake with Brandon and Ansley, and, like, they had this, like, sit-up bar, and she was like, what is that? So she's like 4 or whatever.
Right.
And like I was like, oh, let me show you, and I just started doing like sit-ups like mad, and she was like, no, what is it? I want to try it. I want to try it. And eventually I was like, if you want to try it, you better just be doing it. You understand? So then she like did like one assisted sit-up, barely. I mean, she doesn't get it, and that's fine. But like,
Right.
hopefully.
And like, but like also like another thing that I think a lot of people don't talk about is like also the different, I guess, habits or norms that we inherit from our upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this idea of like I was talking about this with my brother the other day actually, and it was actually quite a profound conversation that we had, and we were talking about because we're both, I don't want to say we're in the same boat, but we definitely understand each other on the basis of the sugar addiction.
Yeah.
As literally just like a baseline, and like this idea that when we were growing up, soda was
The beer.
it was such a rare thing to have. We didn't have soda in the house that was like, we weren't able to just grab a soda whenever we wanted. It was a very like special occasion kind of thing. So it almost became this like weirdly like unobtainable item, but yet brought us so much joy when we did have it, because it was, you know, special occasions, birthday parties, whatever, you know, when we went out to eat, which was relatively rare at the time. But then like you kind of gain this mindset of like, there's this thing that I either can't obtain or can't have all the time, but I like it because it makes me feel good and it releases dopamine in my mind and it makes me feel happy. But like, I can't get this all the time, and then eventually you grow up into an adult and you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Well, and I
and
also
you can
think
get it whenever you want.
It's less about like a familial conditioning or like a nostalgia factor when it comes to like the chemistry of like how sugar gives you this immediate like energetic boost that like can make you crash.
Of course.
And sometimes you
Almost
rely
always
on
does.
crashing as a regular substitute for healthy sleep,
Right.
and then you become really incapable of like telling the difference when you're younger.
Instead of naturally getting tired, you essentially just crash into exhaustion.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's something I see with like so many children in this day and age. I mean, I work at freaking Starbucks, so like,
Right.
you know,
Well, yeah, and
it's
that's
something
the
I
other
think
thing
about
is like,
constantly.
yeah, it's like, it's an addiction. That's something that's like, and I know that to be something that's true within myself, because I've tried several times to like wean myself off, and yet I still catch myself falling back into this self-destructive routine of just drinking fucking shit ton of soda and energy drinks and sugary coffee drinks and stuff like that. But like, again, it's like it's not something that you really feel bad about, like relapsing on
No, because it's food.
you know,
but,
on alcohol.
but then you
or
immediately, or like dairy is a great example, because that's gonna like really set you off course.
yeah.
And that's something I notice. Is like I ate pretty decent today, and then I had I made like this beef stroganoff type thing, and you know, so, and I don't know, you gotta find the things that like really distract your palate,
Well, yeah,
and like tamper with them a little bit.
Well, quite honestly, you know, I think that's one of the main allures of like off the land living, is because it's so fucking clean. It's like you literally put only what you absolutely need into your body.
Yeah.
You don't have any real. You're doing so much to survive that you don't really pay attention to, you know, creature comforts, I guess, to the point where you're only concerned about getting water, or, you know, eating some kind of food. And mostly when it comes to it, like, you can either, you know, you can do it the way, or you can hunt and gather and do that kind of thing. But like, not everybody knows that. So a lot of people, when they do that kind of stuff and they go out into the bush, if you will,
I just think they don't want to do it. I think they know it.
yeah, I'm sure. And like,
they just don't know the methods of like the successful path.
Right. And a lot of people just don't want to take the chance of there not being game to have. They want that security, so they'll bring dehydrated meals or rice or lentils or something like that. You know what I mean? Something that gets you enough energy to, maintain, but not overly doing the caloric intake. You know what I mean? Because but you also got to think is when you're out in the, you don't have a refrigerator, you don't have a freezer, you don't have these things to really
dig a hole.
Yeah, I mean you could, you know what I mean. There's ways that you can do it. You can fucking throw it in a nice cool lake if you want to, you know what I mean. If you want to, but that's not going to last very long.
No, and then I also think it's
it's not as controlled.
Clean is also a really interesting topic when I think about it too, because even when it rains, it's raining some nasty precipitation.
Right, right.
That's why, I want to find stuff at the grocery store or a good grocery store or something local that, you can experiment with and, really see how it treats you and what you can do with it.
Right.
But I think we're going to
get some food, get a beer,
call this video closed. If you watched.
Good talk, guys.
Yeah, thanks for participating. Good talk.
We'll go IG Live later on.
Merch link in the bio.